FC live on this fine Sunday. Alexis Nunes here alongside the one and only Don Hutchison and Beth Lindop, who is fresh from the US in preseason. We usually come to Beth about Liverpool, but guys, this is all about an Arsenal season preview, guys. Get ready for it. Afterwards, we're going to be talking a little bit more about any transfer updates that we're expected to see confirmed in the coming days or weeks. But let's start off with the Gunners, right? The reigning Premier League champions. They were in action in a preseason friendly against Girona. Convincing win, Don. 4-1 over Girona. The likes of Kai Havertz and Max Doman scoring. We'll talk about Max Doman in a bit, but overall, the Gunners pretty much picking up where they left off with a win.
Yeah, absolutely. And the most important thing when you're in a preseason is to get your minutes. The wins are great. I mean, any ex-player that says it doesn't really matter is fibbing just a little bit, because it's always nice to win and have that confidence and keep that winning momentum. But the most important thing is when you've got a squad of players that are now getting up to speed, as you give everyone minutes. So look at the team there and you look at the individuals that are waiting to get more minutes. I think the hard thing for any manager, and I've gone through 17 pre-seasons, is the manager trying to get the same amount of minutes into every single player.
Yeah, and just looking at that 11 there, of course, you're expecting Arsenal to probably add to that, Beth. But we were talking about it just a few days ago when Liverpool were playing against Wrexham, and I was asking you and Stevie if, as it stands, where do you expect this Liverpool to finish? With Arsenal now, it is a championship-winning squad so far. As it stands, how confident would Mikel Arteta be heading into the next season?
I think he should be really confident, to be honest. I think we seem to have evolved away the last couple of years from that space where teams had to get 96, 97 points to guarantee winning the Premier League. I think it's much more open now. I don't think Arsenal are anywhere near the quality that Manchester City were, for example, and their very best teams under Pep Guardiola, but they're still a very strong team. And I think more importantly than that, a really strong squad. And I think that is what it takes now. There's so many games for these players, international competitions included, particularly coming off the back of a World Cup. So it is about having quality, strength and depth. And I think Arsenal have that more so than probably anybody in the Premier League. So, it's not going to be a walk in the park. I'm sure the Premier League is very rarely easy, but I do think Arsenal are in a really good place. I think they probably are the team to beat. I think all of the other teams around them are kind of unknown quantities. They've got new managers. A lot of change sort of behind the scenes, whereas Arsenal are just adding to what, as you say, is a championship winning squad. So I think they should be feeling confident. I think obviously for them the big one will be winning the Champions League this season. That's the one that they'll have the sights on, but they'll obviously want to defend their Premier League title as well, and I think they're in a good place to do that.
Yeah, and of course, Arsenal, like we said, coming off of a title-winning season. They had many highlights of the season, despite it being a roller coaster of emotions for the Gunners. But one of the highest or brightest highlights, I would say, of last season was the emergence of Max Doman, Don, because let's be honest, we're not even going to talk about what you were doing at 16, 17 years old, because this is a family-friendly live stream. But here he is, just months away from turning 17 years old. And we already feel like he can be or should be an integral part of Arsenal next season. Just how high is his ceiling?
Oh, it's very, very difficult to measure. But like any young players, we've seen how good he is. I commentated, I think it was the Everton game when he came off the bench and had an assist and then scored the worldie, I think, from the halfway line. I'm pretty sure it was Everton. I could be wrong. But when you look at the talent and you study him and you watch him, the way he's graceful, the way he can play in different positions, he's just a baby, and he's he's fully grown, and he's got the skill, he's got the temperament, he's got all the attributes that you want, in terms of his passing, his assists, his vision. The hard thing for Max Doman, like any young player, is trying to get into the team. Yeah, that's the hardest thing, because everyone will be pushing him. The media, the likes of us who recognise how much of a good player he's going to be, you want to see him more. The hard thing for Arteta is when you're trying to go back-to-back titles, and you're trying to pick your strongest squad every 3 days, including European football, is trying to give the kid starts. That's the hard thing. But he will be patient because he is very young. He has got a manager in Arteta that knows he's been a young player himself and played for some very big clubs and found it hard to try and get into those big clubs on a start and regular basis. But that's the hard part for Doman, is staying patient, because he'll know. The preseason he's having, exceptional. He's impressing everyone. You've got to impress the coaches, impress the manager, as the most important man at the football club. He's doing that. He's just going along smoothly. It's just trying to be that little bit patient when the starts are not coming and you find yourself on the bench, especially in big nights in the Champions League and big nights in domestic football. I would imagine the plan from Arteta will be the FA Cup and Carabao Cup. Let's give him as many starts as he can. Mm-hmm. And then with the new Champions League format, as you've seen, you can lose 1 or 2 games along the way. So maybe give him more game time in the Champions League to sort of get that development into him.
Yeah, Don talks about the FA Cup, and it was actually the FA Cup last season, Beth, where I remember, of course, Arsenal lost to Southampton, but when Max Dowman was brought on, that's when they seemed revitalized and that they could still be in it, not Southampton. And of course, we know how that story ended, but he was the one highlight of that game. And now he continues to impress in preseason. Do you think from what we've seen from him so far, he's at least made somewhat of a case for a more prominent role next season?
Yeah, I think he has. I think he will probably play more next season. You would hope it's sort of a bit of a gradual development. But, you know, I saw it a lot at Liverpool last season with Rio Engamoa. There was so much, you know, noise and people clamoring for him to be starting more games, particularly when Liverpool weren't doing very well. There were a lot of people saying, you know, why is this kid not being given more of an opportunity? And I actually think, you know, there were a lot of things that Arne Slot got wrong last season. I think the management of Rio Engamoa was probably right. There were maybe a couple of occasions where instead of, you know, 5-10 minutes, he could have got 15. But I think for the most part, the club were very conscious of not wanting to put too much pressure on him, not wanting to overburden him, because at the end of the day, they are so young, you know, 16, 17 years old. Is incredibly young to be playing for a club like Arsenal, to be playing for a club like Liverpool. And I think, you know, toward the end of last season, Liverpool reaped the rewards of having that patience with Engamoa, because he was able to play a little bit more. He'd stayed fit. And even, I mean, you look at Lamine Yamal, who is, you know, arguably the best young talent in world football. And despite the fact that he won the World Cup in the summer, I'm sure in terms of his individual performance, even he would say it wasn't his best World Cup. But then when you compare the amount of minutes that he's already played compared to what Lionel Messi had played by his age, it's so wildly different. Lamine Yamal has played so many more minutes than Messi had by the time that he was 19 years old. So, you know, you have to be so careful with these young players. Bukayo Saka played an awful lot when he was a younger player and has started having a couple of injury issues over the past couple of years. So as much as it's tempting, I think, to try and throw these young players in, and it's important, like Don said, to keep on building up and giving them opportunities, whether that be in the Cups or the early stages of the Champions League, you also do have to bear in mind that, you know, the bodies are still developing and it will take time, and you've got to be careful with them as well.
Yeah, 100%. And Beth brings up a great point there, Don. Just a two-part question, I suppose, for you, because how would you want to see Max Dowman manage now at Arsenal? And where does he fall when we talk about the youngsters in the world that are setting the world alight? Of course, Lamine Yamal probably being right there at the top. He's now freshly a world champion. But, you know, even at 19, he already feels like a veteran with the way Barcelona rely on him. And you see that a lot at Barcelona with Gavi, with Pedri as well. But you also see how now they have picked up certain niggling injuries. You look at Mexico, who have Gilberto Mora as well, who was helping Mexico get to the knockout rounds of the World Cup and then graduating from high school the next day. So Max Dowman, where does he fit in that conversation, and how do you want to see him managed?
Do you know what? I don't think he should fit into the conversation. I don't think he should, because you're trying to compare Dowman to Yamal, and they are at this present time worlds apart. But that doesn't mean they're worlds apart in ability. It's just, as Beth said, it's Yamal's got all these appearances behind him, so he's strong. He's a strong, fit lad. Where Dowman's trying to get his Premier League legs, he's trying to be physically strong. He's trying to, you know, have that capability where he can churn out. You know, I think if Arteta had said in pre-season or says in pre-season, Dowman's going to play 20 games in whatever competition that might be. 20 games is still good, I think, for that age group of player, unless you're like Yamal and you're like Messi and you're like out of this world where you have to be in the team. But you both made great points about Gavi and Pedri being in the Barca side and picking up injuries because they were playing a lot of minutes. So I'm one of these where I don't think he should be in the conversation, because I don't want to overhype him. I want to let his performances do the work. I want everyone just to watch and enjoy him and whatever ride that takes him on, because anything can happen with young players. We can sit here and say Dowman's going to be one of the best players in the world. Bam, an injury. Or as Beth said, body's not grown right. He has little niggles along the way, can't sustain minutes, can't sustain form. And all of a sudden confidence then takes a knock. it's a hard ride when you're a youngster. So I want to sort of just pedal back on that diamond slightly. And then I want to see him playing at his best in, I don't know, a year or 18 months' time.
Yeah, definitely. Time is something that Max Darwin has on his side. Although at 17, that's the last thing you want to hear when you've just gotten a taste of the bright lights. Well, speaking of Arsenal, Beth, of course, you spoke about the fact that one of the things that they relied on heavily and worked for them last season was the fact that they have such a deep squad. But naturally, in the transfer window, they're going to try and add more depth. They have been heavily linked with Bruno Guimaraes now. Apparently, I know this is why I went to Beth, Don. This is why I went to Beth. It's a dark time at Newcastle for Don, so we'll get to it. But of course, we're hearing it's an £80 million deal that's going to be on the cards. He's set for a medical. I was thinking it's going to take a miracle for him to He's set for a medical now, so it all but looks officially confirmed. But £80 million now. Of course, you've been tracking other transfers and potential transfers, as we were talking about with Barcola to Liverpool. We're looking at some silly money in the transfer window this summer right now. No surprise given the way the Premier League is going. But how would you compare this deal to probably some of the other midfielder deals that we've seen? For example, Elliot Anderson or even Sandro Tonali. Sorry, Don.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the current market, it's a bargain, really, isn't it? I suppose he's obviously a little bit older, certainly, than Elliot Anderson. And that's, maybe why the price has been adjusted slightly. I think he's an excellent player. I really do. I don't necessarily think he's somebody who improves Arsenal's ceiling. I think they already are very strong in midfield anyway. But again, coming back to that idea of having quality squad depth, I think he's somebody who absolutely gives them that. And I think when you consider, Declan Rice in particular has had a really, really hectic couple of years. He obviously played with a little bit of an injury, didn't he, at the World Cup? And so it remains to be seen how sort of fit he's going to be at the start of the season, and so it's it's going to be a bit of a luxury if they do get him in for Mikel Arteta to say, well, actually, we don't need to start Declan Rice in that game because we have Bruno Guimaraes who can come in and play at a similarly high level. So I think he's a good signing for them. I don't necessarily, like I say, I don't think he's going to sort of transform the squad. I think there's anything that Arsenal needs to improve, I would say it's probably in the forward line, and I'm sure we'll maybe come on to that in a little bit. I think if Bruno had gone to Liverpool, for example, I think he would have automatically made that team better, because I think they've been really lacking that grit in midfield, certainly last season, and I think he brings that. Manchester United probably as well, with Casemiro going. I think there were maybe other clubs where I'd look and say, right, that's maybe a bit of a better fit, but I think he's going to go there, and I'm sure he'll do very well. And as I'm sure, as difficult it is for Newcastle fans and to see somebody that they love and admire so much to go out the door. He's getting to the point of his career now where he obviously wants to be in contention for the biggest prizes, and so you can understand why Arsenal is an appealing project for him at the moment.
Yeah, Don, you ready for this one? I'm tempted to ask you, what do you think of this deal? Will he make a good fit at Arsenal? But I know your Newcastle heart is saying, no, you don't like this deal. What's your head saying?
Listen, I think Bruno's earned the right. I mean, listen, the £80 million, I think, is cheap. I think especially when Sandro Tonali went for closer to 100, because he's the heartbeat of Newcastle. To Newcastle fans, he's worth 200 million because they love him and he's the captain of the club. And the way he plays, the way he wears his heart on the sleeve, and he's just one of these guys. He says what he thinks, but you can tell that he loves Newcastle. It's like you can't begrudge him the move, because everyone around him, the squad's getting dismantled left, right, and centre. You can't then just hang on as a fan and go, even though you'd love to, as just say, Bruno, please stay. Please stay. All your top players have all gone, but can you please stay and be in a relegation scrap? He don't deserve that. So yeah. Bruno's saying now, he's been very quiet. He doesn't want to go down the route of Alexander Isak. Doesn't want to go down of dragging his heels and dragging Newcastle into it. I'm with Beth. I'm surprised that Man United, even though their transfer policy is not to go, into that £80 million mark, they're more 40, 50. I'm very, very surprised Liverpool haven't made the move, because to me, he feels like a perfect fit for Liverpool. So, yeah, I think what Bruno wants now at his age at 29, he wants trophies. He wants to leave England in a few years' time saying, listen, I've won the Champions League. I've won Premier League titles. He'll be forever a legend at Newcastle, winning the Carabao Cup and, being part of taking Newcastle away from relegation into 2 Champions Leagues, being part of the team that dismantled PSG at St James's Park, give Newcastle fans the best nights of their life in Europe and watching some of the very biggest of sides going to St James's Park and really, really struggling. So, yeah, I think he deserves his move. The best thing Newcastle can do now as a club is get the biggest fee possible. They've done that with Tonali. They've done that with Anthony Gordon. They've done that with Isak. They might do that with Lewis Hall if Man United come calling. So the best thing you can do as a Newcastle fan is wish him all the very best and thank him. As a club, try and get as much money as possible.
Don's voice was breaking up a little bit there, so we're going to let him have a quick cry while I go to the next. We're just going to move on from this. No more talk. Sorry, Don. We're going to talk about Vinny Jr. quickly. Beth, to Arsenal. What do we know or what are you hearing about Arsenal or the level of Arsenal's interest in the Real Madrid man?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I think that there've been sort of conflicting reports over the last couple of days, and I think it depends, which angle you want to look at it from. I think there's maybe some people who feel like he's using it as a little bit of a bargaining chip to try and get a better deal at Real Madrid, and there's other people who feel like he's genuinely really open to this move. And again, they're the Premier League champions, Arsenal, so it's a chance to go in, and I suppose he'll be thinking. Whereas, as I say, with Bruno, I don't necessarily think he fills an obvious void for Arsenal. I think Vinny Jr. does, if he is to come in. I think they are lacking a little bit that star power in the forward line, particularly because Saka has been in and out over the last couple of seasons with injury. So he comes in automatically and is the main man. So it will be interesting to see how that one plays out. I think if I had to put money on it right now, I would say he maybe stays at Real Madrid and signs a new contract. But there's obviously real concrete interest there. There's obviously interest from the player in Arsenal. So definitely one to watch over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think all stars are pointing that he could most likely stay at Real Madrid and give it another go at Don. But is this based on what Beth said and the fact that forward line for Arsenal for ages now has needed that kind of star power, and Vinny Jr. undoubtedly provides it as well. So do you think this is one Arsenal should just pursue with everything?
Do you know what? Even if they don't get him, it's still a good look for Arsenal. It's still a very good look for the football club that you're trying to buy Vinny Jr. and a Real Madrid Galactico. Even if they don't get him, it's like, well, we were in the market for that type of player. It's still a win-win for Arsenal. So if they got Vinny Jr., I think it changes everything. It puts Arsenal into the bracket of we can sign the best players in the world. If we get Vinny Jr., we can go to PSG and we can buy their best players as well. So I think I'm with Beth. I think I've seen this movie before. I think he uses everyone else as a bargaining tool and he signs that new contract at Real Madrid. But great look for Arsenal being in for him.
Yeah, great look indeed for the Gunners. All right, we're going to tie a little bow on Arsenal season preview quickly and just get some quick predictions. Beth, do Arsenal defend their Premier League title?
Yes, I think they do, just because I think that there are too many unknowns about the other teams. So I'm going to say that they're probably in the best shape to go on and defend the title.
Don?
Yeah, I think only just.
Only just. Who's coming in second? Who's pushing them? City again?
Well, I think Chelsea are a very unknown, no European football whatsoever. Man City and the Maresca will be there. Liverpool can't be as bad as what they were last season. So I think everyone will be a little bit closer. The only reason why I say just is because, as Beth said before, there's a lot of Arsenal players have had a lot of minutes over the last 2 years. So jaded, you might see Arsenal be in the first few weeks of the season, but I think we'll get on a roll. I think we'll just about do it.
All right. Well, that is the news that all Gunners fans would be hoping to hear. That's going to conclude our Arsenal season preview, but definitely want to touch on some transfer news. Beth, I feel like a broken record. This is probably the fourth time, I think, this week alone that I have asked you about this deal, but where are we with the whole Bradley Barcola to Liverpool saga?
Yeah, well, it is becoming a bit of a saga, really, isn't it? Because it has all gone a little bit quiet since obviously the news broke in midweek that Liverpool were preparing to make a bid. Beyond that, we've not really heard much else. You would imagine that maybe those conversations with PSG have happened by now, and maybe it is just about negotiating a fee. Again, I still think it will happen. I think there's a desire from the players' side, there's a desire from Liverpool's side, and it feels like PSG are sort of they're reinforcing their ranks anyway with some of the forward signings that they're linked with and they're bringing in. So it sort of feels like PSG are maybe trying to get all of their ducks in a row, and then they can say to Barcola, right, okay, we've got a strong enough forward line. We can give you the freedom to go. So I think it will go through, but I think hopefully it will be in the next couple of days because it has all been very quiet since midweek.
Don, you like that one, despite the fact that Beth has told us it's looking like 150 million.
Listen, I'm not spending the money. I'm all right. I'm not spending the money. I think PSG are playing a good game here because they're buying reinforcements and they're getting their ducks in a row. Then the dominoes will fall from there. Then you'd imagine, Barca will make that move.
All right. Fans all around, except for Stevie Nicol, who, being Scottish like Don, is a bit more tight with his pennies, even if he's not spending them. All right. Final one now. Cody Gakpo to Spurs. Beth, just tell us how that all came about and could it actually happen?
Yeah, I think there is some substance to it. I think Tottenham are interested in him. There's been a little bit of noise about that for a little while. I think from Liverpool's perspective, it's a risk because the squad is so thin right now. They've lost so much experience, obviously, with Mo Salah, Konate, Andy Robertson. So to lose another member of a title-winning squad is in the same summer when they've already got so much to do. I think it's a little bit risky. If I were Liverpool, I would probably say, we'll keep him around for another season, and then maybe we can review next summer. Or even in January if it looks like Hugo Ekitike is making his way back. But I think Liverpool, without Gakpo going, if you include Barkley, they need a minimum of 2 forwards, maybe even 3. I think if Gakpo goes, then they definitely need 3. And I don't think that they will get 3 in before the end of the window to the standard that they need. I think for Tottenham, it'd be probably quite a smart move. Gakpo is maybe not the most exciting player, but he does get you goals and he knows the league. He's a Premier League winner. So it's definitely one to keep an eye on. I think it maybe will come down to whether Liverpool think there's, other players out there in the market that they can get in to replace him. He's probably one of the few players that they'd be willing to sell that could generate a fair amount of money. One to keep an eye on. But I think if I were Liverpool, I'd be keeping him around for another season.
Yeah, Don, because I feel like, as Beth said, he may not necessarily his style set the world alight, but he's that kind of player that whether he starts or comes off of the bench, as we even saw with the Netherlands, he can have an impact, especially when Liverpool needed it the most. So should Liverpool even be entertaining this at least this season?
No, unless the figure's really high. I think what I read the other day, I think was close to 72 million, which is a lot of money, but Liverpool are losing players for fun. Mm-hmm. I mean, Luis Diaz, they should never got rid of, in a heartbeat. It was Cody Gakpo or Luis Diaz, and why they went down the route of selling Luis Diaz, I will never know. I will never understand that one. All right, there's reasons why what Liverpool said because he commanded a higher transfer fee. I get that, but they're immeasurable in terms of how both players play. So they can't afford to lose another one in Gakpo, and they say to Ngamo, all right, you're going to be the guy that's going to play every single game off the back of our Max Downman chap being a youngster. Mm-hmm. You're going to be the guy that's going to play every single game in the domestic games, the Premier League games and Champions League games, and you're going to churn out 55 games for us. It's more or less impossible. So Liverpool have got to stop losing players, and I'd like to see Richard Hughes and the hierarchy at Liverpool actually spending some money now and actually getting bodies in. They need depth badly.
Don, they spent so much money last season, remember?
I know, but it didn't. But they lost a lot of players. I still say the job that the hierarchy done, leaving on a slot a weakened squad. I think they need to come into question. Mm. When you look at the side that Liverpool when they won the title, and Beth can help me, I'm probably missing a few, but Kelleher in goal. Then you've got Joe Gomez. Then you've got Conor Bradley at right back. All these were on the bench, by the way. Endo. You had Darwin Nunez. You had Jota coming off the bench. You had Curtis Jones then coming off the bench as well. All these players, and the majority of them were gone. But last season, it was like, right, can you bring Chiesa on for 15 minutes? Can you bring Ngamo on for 15 minutes? Can some guys, including Curtis Jones, play out of position and play at right back? The squad is thin. So I've got no idea when you're looking. I'd love to be a privy of the conversation, the hierarchy, why they've allowed so many players to leave the door, and then expect the players that were left just play to, when you look at, when you look at Virgil van Dijk last year, I put him in my team of the year, and it was only just a little bit of fun. It was a Premier League team of the year, and it was a little bit of fun. And the reason why I put him in, because this guy played every single minute of the Champions League, every single minute of the Premier League. Virgil van Dijk was playing twice a week for close to 55, 60 games, and he never missed a game. So he can't be expected again to do that again for Liverpool. So, as I said, they need bodies in badly.
Beth, just a quick reaction to what Don's saying.
Yeah, spot on, 100%. I think Arsenal's greatest strength is that strength in depth. I think Liverpool are so thin, the squad. I think they need probably another 4 or 5 to be anywhere near sort of the title this season. And again, time is running out. They've obviously brought in Victor Munoz. They brought in Jeremy Jacquet in January, but he's off the back of an injury. Giovanni Leone, who they bought last summer, is off the back of an injury. So it's not just that they've not got many numbers; it's that actually a lot of these players are coming off injuries or seasons, like Don said, where Virgil. I mean, Virgil's 35 now. Do you know what I mean? He should be at the point of his career where, yeah, he's still an important part of the team. He's still the captain, but he can be rested when he needs it. And they've just not had that option for the past couple of years. And at this moment in time, it doesn't look like they're going to have that option this season as well.
Beth Kwanzaa was a name that I forgot to mention that was sat on the bench as well. I'm surprised Liverpool haven't had the buyback clause and tried to get him back.
Yeah, so they do have a buyback clause with Kwanzaa, but that isn't active until next summer. So maybe that is something that, if he has a good season with Leverkusen, it's something that they can maybe go back and revisit. And then maybe, you're at a point, obviously Van Dijk's out of contract next summer. So maybe that's something that you do then. But yeah, it does feel like they need bodies pretty quickly.
All right. Well, we'll leave it to Don to turn this entire show into a Newcastle and Liverpool venting session. We're talking about Arsenal first. But thanks as always to Don Hutchison, who we're going to let go off and cry for the rest of the day. Beth, always an absolute pleasure. Thanks to everyone for tuning into this edition of ESPN FC Live, and we will catch you here again soon.